Part 1. The crystalline dreadnought emerged from hyperspace like a predator breaking through water. Its hull sparkled with 1,000 reflected stars, each surface designed to remind lesser species of the Zalathi Empire's perfection. Inside the command deck, Ambassador Krixtal adjusted his ceremonial armor and allowed himself a small smile. Today would be another reminder to the humans of their place in the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the Zalathi had ruled the Orion Arm. 100 species bowed before them. Some had fought at first, but they all learned the same lesson. The Empire's technology was supreme. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their resolve unbreakable. Those who submitted lived. Those who resisted became examples. Humans were the newest addition to the Empire's collection of servant races. 50 years ago, when humanity had barely managed to establish colonies beyond their home system, the Zalathi had arrived. The first contact had gone exactly as expected. The humans had tried to fight with their primitive nuclear weapons and chemical rockets. The battle had lasted less than an hour. After losing half their fleet, Earth had surrendered. Since then, humanity had been a model subject species. They paid their tributes on time, mostly raw materials from their asteroid mines. They accepted the technology restrictions without complaint. They submitted to regular inspections without resistance. Some in the Empire even joked that humans were the most boring species they had conquered. No rebellions, no secret weapons programs, no desperate attempts at freedom. Just quiet obedience. Ambassador Krixtal found them disappointing. He had read the reports about humanity's early history. They had been warriors once, fighting among themselves with surprising creativity and violence. But meeting the Empire had broken that spirit. Now they were miners and farmers, nothing more. His ship approached Earth's main orbital shipyard. From the viewing screen, he could see the sprawling complex of metal and ceramic that humans used to build their cargo vessels. The Empire allowed them basic space travel for commerce, but nothing military. No weapons, no advanced drives, no defensive systems. The inspection protocols were clear about this. Ambassador, we are receiving a transmission from the human facility, his communications officer announced. Display it, Krixtal ordered. The screen flickered, revealing a human in a simple gray uniform. Admiral Chen, if Krixtal remembered correctly. The humans insisted on keeping military ranks even though they had no real military. It was almost sad. Ambassador Krixtal, Admiral Chen said with a slight bow. We welcome you to Earth orbital space. We have prepared for your inspection as requested. Admiral Chen, Krixtal responded, not bothering to bow back. I trust you have all documentation ready for review. The Empire has received reports of increased activity in your shipyards. We must ensure compliance with Treaty 77 Alpha. Of course, Ambassador. Everything is in order. Would you prefer to begin with our documentation review or tour the facility? There was something different about the Admiral today. Krixtal had met him several times before during inspections. Usually the human looked tired, defeated. Today there was something else in his eyes. Not defiance exactly, but something harder to define. We will begin with the facility tour, Krixtal decided. My sensors show most of your construction bays are empty. This is unusual. We have recently completed a large order of cargo haulers for the Batari Trade Consortium, Chen explained. Most of our bays are currently being refitted for the next production cycle. Krixtal frowned. His sensors showed 5 empty bays, normal maintenance in 2 others, but there was one bay that was different. Bay 8 was covered in some kind of shielding that his sensors could not penetrate. This was not normal. This was not allowed. Admiral Chen, what is in Bay 8? Bay 8 contains a special project, Ambassador. A new type of cargo hauler designed for deep space mineral extraction. My sensors cannot scan it. The bay uses specialized radiation shielding due to the nature of the work being done. It is perfectly safe, I assure you. Krixtal felt his scales shift, a sign of irritation. Humans were not allowed to develop technology that could block Zalathi sensors. This was explicitly forbidden in the treaty. You will remove the shielding immediately, he ordered. My team will inspect Bay 8 personally. Ambassador, I must advise against that. The shielding is for your protection as well. The construction process involves Admiral Chen, Krixtal interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous tone. Need I remind you of the consequences of violating our treaty? The Empire has been patient with humanity, but that patience has limits. You will comply, or I will call for the nearest fleet to investigate this violation properly. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. Then surprisingly he smiled. It was not a happy smile or a sad smile. It was something else entirely. Ambassador, before we proceed, may I ask you something? Krickstahl's scales shifted again. Humans did not ask questions during inspections. They answered them. Speak, he said carefully. In your 3,000 years of rule, has any species ever truly surprised the Empire? What kind of question is that? A simple one. Has any species ever done something the Empire did not expect? Krickstahl thought about it. There had been the Marlocks who had tried to destroy their own sun rather than surrender. The Vivendi who had attempted to flee to another galaxy. The Korvax who had hidden underground for a decade before being found. But surprised? Truly surprised? No, he admitted. Every species follows predictable patterns. They fight, they lose, they submit, or they are destroyed. Your point, Admiral. My point, Ambassador, is that perhaps the Empire has grown too comfortable with those patterns. Too confident that every species will act exactly as expected. The bridge of Krickstahl's ship fell silent. His officers looked at each other with confusion. Was this human threatening them? That would be absurd. Earth had no weapons, no fleet. Nothing that could challenge even a single Zealoty patrol ship. Admiral Chen, you seem to be under some misunderstanding about your position. Earth is a subject world. You exist at the Empire's pleasure. Now you will remove the shielding from Bay 8, or I will have my ship remove it with weapons fire. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. Very well, Ambassador. But I want it on record that I warned you. What you're about to see will change everything. Nothing humanity could build would change anything, Admiral. You are barely more advanced than you were 50 years ago. That's what we wanted you to think, Chen said quietly. Before Krickstahl could respond, the Admiral turned to someone off-screen and nodded. Remove the shielding from Bay 8. On the main viewer, Krickstahl watched as the massive covering over Bay 8 began to retract. The shielding pulled back like curtains opening on a stage. What was revealed underneath made every Zealothi on the bridge stop breathing. It was a ship. But not any kind of cargo hauler. This was something else entirely. The vessel was 1 kilometer long, its hull made of a metal so black it seemed to absorb light itself. The design was partly familiar, incorporating elements that looked almost Zealothi but wrong somehow, improved in ways that should not be possible. Other parts were completely alien, using principles Krickstahl did not recognize. But most disturbing were the symbols etched into the hull. They were ancient markings, the language of the race that had ruled the galaxy before disappearing millions of years ago. The ancients whose technology was forbidden to all, whose artifacts were to be reported to the Empire immediately. What have you done? Krickstahl whispered. We've spent 50 years preparing, Ambassador, Chen said, his voice now hard as steel. Every inspection, every humiliation, every unfair treaty. We smiled and nodded and learned. We studied every ship you brought to our space. We excavated Mars in secret and found things you told us didn't exist. We recruited the brightest minds from every world you allowed us to trade with. And we built something new. This is impossible. You are primitives. You cannot build something like this. Primitives? Chen laughed. Ambassador, we split the atom before we even left our planet. We went to our moon with computers less powerful than what children play with now. We decoded our own DNA and learned to rewrite it. We are many things, Ambassador, but we are not primitives. We are engineers, scientists, warriors, and we've been very, very patient. Krickstahl's mind raced. This was a violation of dozens of treaties. The Empire would destroy Earth for this, but first he needed to know more. What is that ship? He demanded. Admiral Chen's smile widened. That, Ambassador, is the USS Blackstar, humanity's first true warship in 50 years, and it's going to change everything. Part 2. Ambassador Krickstahl stared at the massive black ship floating in Bay 8. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The USS Blackstar was impossible. Every part of it violated the treaties humanity had signed. More than that, it violated what the Empire knew about human capabilities. You will explain this immediately, Krickstahl commanded, though his voice lacked its usual authority. Admiral Chen appeared to consider the request. Behind him, other humans moved with purpose, not panic. They had been expecting this moment. Where would you like me to begin, Ambassador? With how we reverse-engineered your technology, or how we found and decoded ancient artifacts? Or perhaps you'd like to know how we've hidden this from your inspections for 5 years. 5 years? Krickstahl's scales turned pale. This project has been active for 5 years? The Blackstar itself, yes. But the program began much earlier. Really, it started the day after we surrendered to your empire, Krixtal activated his communication system. This is Ambassador Krixtal to Imperial Fleet Command. Priority 1 message. Earth has violated. The signal died. Every screen on his bridge flickered and went dark before returning to normal. But the communication system remained silent. I'm afraid your messages won't be getting through, Ambassador, Chen said calmly. The Blackstar is jamming all outgoing signals from your ship. Don't worry, it's temporary. We have no intention of harming you or your crew. This is an act of war. No, Ambassador. What you've done to 100 species for 3,000 years is an act of war. This is something else. This is a demonstration. The Bay 8 doors began to open, revealing the stars beyond. The Blackstar's engines started to glow with a light that hurt to look at directly. It wasn't the blue-white of Zalathi drives or the orange of human chemical rockets. It was something that seemed to twist space itself. Weapons officer, target that ship immediately, Krixtal ordered. Sir, I cannot. Our weapon systems are not responding. Navigation, also non-responsive, Ambassador. Life support? Still functional, sir. It seems they have only disabled our offensive and movement systems. Krixtal turned back to the screen where Admiral Chen watched with that same unsettling calm. How? Krixtal asked simply. Your computer systems, like everything else about your technology, haven't changed much in the last 1,000 years, Chen explained. Why would they? You were the apex predator of the galaxy. No one could challenge you, so you never needed to evolve. But we spent 50 years studying every system you've shown us. Every inspection where you demonstrated your superior technology was a learning opportunity. The Blackstar began to move. It slid out of Bay 8 with impossible grace for something so large. As it emerged fully, Krixtal could see more details. Weapon ports that combined Zalathi energy designs with something else. Armor plating that seemed to shift and move like liquid. Sensor arrays that incorporated technologies from a dozen different species. You've stolen from the Empire, Krixtal accused. Stolen? Chen shook his head. No, Ambassador. We've learned. Every species you've conquered had unique technologies, unique perspectives. You took their resources and crushed their spirits. But you never bothered to truly understand what made them special. We did. The Korvax underground cities taught us about stealth. The Marlock solar technology gave us new power systems. The Vivendi's failed attempt to flee to another galaxy provided insights into long-range travel. Every species you conquered and discarded had something to teach. We listened. The Blackstar was fully clear of the dock now. It turned slowly, presenting its profile to Krixtal's ship. Along its hull, sections began to open. Dozens of smaller craft emerged, each no bigger than a shuttle but moving with coordinated precision that spoke of artificial intelligence. Drone fighters, Chen said, noticing Krixtal's attention. Controlled by quantum computers that can predict movement patterns faster than any biological pilot can react. Another thing you said was impossible. The Empire will destroy you for this. One ship, no matter how advanced, cannot stand against our entire fleet. You're right, Chen agreed. One ship can't, that's why we didn't build just one. The space around Earth shimmered. Like a curtain being pulled back, the empty void revealed 12 more ships, each one identical to the Blackstar, hanging in perfect formation around the planet. Krixtal felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. 13 ships, he whispered. One for each of Earth's major nations, Chen explained. We could have built more, but we wanted to make a point, not start a war. Not yet, anyway. This is madness. Even 13 ships cannot defeat the Empire. We have thousands of vessels, millions of soldiers, all built with the same technology you've used for a millennium. All following the same tactics, all thinking the same way. Chen stood up from his chair, his full height now visible on the screen. Ambassador, let me show you what human innovation looks like. The lead Blackstar fired something at a piece of debris floating nearby, a broken satellite from Earth's early space program. The weapon wasn't a laser or plasma beam like the Empire used. It was something that grabbed the debris and compressed it. In seconds, the satellite, which had been the size of a building, was crushed down to a sphere no bigger than a marble. Gravitational lancing, Chen said. We developed it from studying ancient power sources. Your scientists said manipulating gravity as a weapon was impossible. They were wrong. Another Blackstar demonstrated a different capability. It flew directly at a small asteroid, and just before impact it vanished. A moment later it reappeared on the other side, having passed through the solid rock as if it wasn't there. Dimensional phase shifting. We can move through solid matter by shifting slightly out of normal space. Your shields, your armor, your stations, we can bypass them all. A third ship released a cloud of something that looked like glittering dust. The cloud moved against the solar wind, spreading in patterns that defied physics. Where it touched small pieces of space debris, the objects began to dissolve. Nanobots, Chen said simply, programmed to break down specific materials at the molecular level. These ones are set for common hull metals, but we can program them for anything, or anyone. Crystal watched each demonstration with growing dread. Any one of these technologies would shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Together, they represented something unprecedented. You've doomed your entire species, he said finally. When the Empire learns of this, they will not just defeat you. They will erase you, every human colony. Every trace of your civilization will be removed from existence. They'll try, Chen agreed. In fact, we're counting on it. You see, Ambassador, we've studied your Empire's history very carefully. You've never faced a real challenge. You've grown comfortable, complacent. Your tactics haven't changed because they've never needed to. Your technology hasn't advanced because no one could match what you had. Chen paused, letting his words sink in. But we're not trying to match you. We're trying to surpass you. And we've had 50 years of motivation. Every child who grew up under your occupation. Every scientist told their research wasn't allowed. Every engineer forced to build only what you approved. They all contributed to this moment. What do you want? Crystal asked. He hated how weak the question sounded, but he needed to know. Right now, we want you to understand. The USS Blackstar and her sister ships aren't just weapons. They're symbols. Proof that humanity will not remain slaves. We've played your game, followed your rules, and learned your weaknesses. And now the game changes. The Empire will send a fleet. 100 ships. 1,000 if necessary, we know. We've run the simulations millions of times. Our quantum computers have analyzed every possible response the Empire might make. And do you know what they all have in common, Ambassador? Crystal remained silent. The Empire loses. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks. But in every simulation, against every strategy your people have ever used, the Empire loses. Because you're predictable, and we're not. The 13 Black Stars moved in perfect synchronization, forming a sphere around Crystal's ship. They didn't fire, didn't threaten. They just positioned themselves, a clear message of control. We're going to let you go, Ambassador. We want you to return to your Empire and tell them what you've seen. Show them the recordings, share the data. Let them know that humanity is no longer their subject. We are something new, something they've never faced before. They won't believe me. They'll think it's a trick, a deception. Then they'll send a scout fleet to verify, and when that fleet doesn't return, they'll send a larger one, and we'll be ready. Chen sat back down in his chair, his expression returning to the same calm professionalism he had shown at the beginning. You have 1 hour to leave Earth space, Ambassador. Your systems will be returned to your control once you're beyond lunar orbit. I suggest you use the journey home to consider what you'll tell your superiors. This isn't over, Crystal said, trying to salvage some authority. No, Chen agreed. It's just beginning. Part 3. 3 weeks passed before the Empire's response arrived. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the USS Blackstar, watching the tactical display as hundreds of hyperspace signatures appeared at the edge of the solar system. The Zalathi had not sent a scout fleet to verify Crystal's report. They had sent an execution force. 412 vessels confirmed, reported Captain Sarah Martinez from her station, dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, and support craft. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Let's hear it, Chen ordered. The main screen filled with the image of Fleet Marshal Thexera, Supreme Military Commander of the Zalathi Empire's Third Fleet. Her crystalline features were arranged in what Chen had learned was extreme anger. Humans of Earth, she began without preamble, you have committed crimes against the natural order of the galaxy. You have violated sacred treaties. You have stolen forbidden technology. The sentence is death, not just for those responsible, but for your entire species. Every human colony will burn. Every trace of your existence will be erased from history. This is the price of defiance. The transmission ended. No terms, no negotiation, just a promise of extinction. Well, Chen said to his bridge crew, they seem upset. Despite the situation, several officers chuckled. They had been preparing for this moment for years. Every person on the Blackstar was a volunteer, chosen from thousands who had trained in secret facilities hidden across the solar system. Admiral, the enemy fleet is moving in system. They'll be in weapons range of Earth in 6 hours at their current speed, Captain Martinez reported. Are all 13 ships ready? Yes, sir. The other commanders report full readiness. President Kumar aboard the Mumbai, General Ross on the Washington, Admiral Tanaka on the Yamato. Everyone is in position, Chen nodded. Humanity had decided to name each Blackstar after a major Earth city, a reminder of what they were fighting for. And our special surprise? Martinez smiled. Ready and waiting, sir. The Zalathi fleet moved with the confidence of absolute superiority. They maintained perfect formation, a wall of destruction advancing on Earth. They had done this 100 times before to rebellious worlds. The outcome was never in doubt. 4 hours into their approach, something unexpected happened. Space itself seemed to ripple in front of the Zalathi fleet. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly found themselves scattered across 1,000,000 kilometers. On the bridge of her flagship, Fleet Marshal Thexara demanded answers. What happened? Why are we out of formation? Unknown, Marshal. Something disrupted local space-time. Navigation systems are recalibrating. Before they could recover, the 13 Blackstars appeared. Not at the edge of the battlefield where defenders typically made their stand, but inside the scattered Zalathi formation itself. The human ships had used their dimensional phase technology to skip through space, appearing exactly where they wanted to be. Each Blackstar targeted multiple enemy vessels simultaneously. The USS Blackstar fired its gravitational lance at a Zalathi dreadnought. The massive warship, 2 kilometers of crystalline armor and weapons, crumpled like paper. In seconds, it was compressed to a sphere barely 10 meters across. The gravitational forces were so intense that not even a distress signal escaped. The Mumbai released clouds of nanobots that drifted on solar winds toward a cluster of battlecruisers. When the microscopic machines reached their targets, hull plates began to dissolve. Atmosphere vented from 1,000 tiny breaches. The crews inside had minutes to abandon ship before their vessels literally fell apart around them. The Washington demonstrated another human innovation. It fired what looked like ordinary missiles, but when they reached their targets, they didn't explode. Instead, they attached to Zalathi ships and began broadcasting. Every computer system on the affected vessel started showing the same message in Zalathi script. Your technology belongs to us now. Control systems reversed. Weapons turned on friendly ships. Engines pushed vessels into collision courses with their allies. The Empire's own technology had become their enemy. Fleet Marshal Thexara watched in horror as her perfect fleet descended into chaos. Ships fired on each other. Others simply stopped responding to commands. Some were crushed, dissolved, or taken over by technologies that shouldn't exist. All ships scatter, break formation, and engage independently, she ordered. It was the worst thing she could have done. Scattered ships were easier for the Blackstars to hunt. The human vessels worked in perfect coordination, their quantum computers predicting every move the Zalathi made before they made it. The Yamato demonstrated yet another capability. It projected an energy field that simply turned off Zalathi shields. Not destroyed them or overwhelmed them, but switched them off like flipping a light switch. Suddenly, the Empire's vessels were naked before human weapons, but the real surprise was yet to come. Marshal, her sensor officer said with disbelief, "We're detecting more ships, hundreds of them. They're coming from Earth's moon." The lunar surface, which had seemed dead and cratered, suddenly came alive. Hidden doors opened in crater floors. Camouflaged hangars revealed themselves. Ships began to rise from concealed bases. These weren't more Blackstars. These were smaller, simpler vessels. But there were so many of them. 500, 1,000, 2,000. They kept coming. Impossible, Thexara breathed. Our sensors showed nothing. Our spies reported nothing. Admiral Chen's face appeared on her screen. Marshal Thexara, those are our Archer-class vessels. Not as advanced as the Blackstars, but more than capable of handling your damaged fleet. We've been building them in underground lunar facilities for 20 years. Every mining operation you approved was actually expanding our shipyards. You planned this. All of it, every detail. We knew you would send a large fleet, but not your entire force. The Empire is too arrogant to think it needs everything to crush one rebellious world. We knew you would come in standard formation because it's worked for 3,000 years. We knew your responses because you've used the same tactics against every rebellion. The battle, if it could be called that, was becoming a slaughter. Zalathi ships were being destroyed or disabled at a rate that defied belief. The mighty Third Fleet, terror of 100 worlds, was being picked apart by 13 advanced ships and a swarm of smaller vessels. Surrender, Chen offered. This doesn't have to continue. The Empire does not surrender to lesser species. Then you've chosen extinction. The Blackstar fired again. This time it wasn't using its gravitational lance, a beam of pure energy, derived from ancient power sources humanity had found on Mars, cut through 3 dreadnoughts in a single sweep. The beam was so powerful it continued on into space, visible from Earth's surface like a new star. On Earth, billions of humans watched the battle through broadcasts. For 50 years they had lived under the Empire's boot. They had endured inspections, restrictions, and humiliations. Now they watched their oppressors fall from the sky like burning rain. The Archer-class vessels swarmed larger Zalathi ships like angry wasps. They were equipped with weapons specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in Zalathi armor. Weaknesses humanity had discovered through 50 years of careful study. Within 3 hours, the Third Fleet was gone. Of 412 vessels, only 43 remained functional. These survivors were surrounded, weapons disabled, engines crippled. Fleet Marshal Thexara stood on her ruined bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed the complete destruction of her force. In 3,000 years of Empire history, nothing like this had ever happened. Admiral Chen appeared on her screen one final time. Marshal, I'm going to allow your surviving ships to leave. But first, I want you to understand something. This was not our full strength. We have more ships you haven't seen. We have weapons we haven't revealed. We have been preparing for this day since the moment we first surrendered. He paused, letting his words sink in. Go back to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity is no longer afraid. Tell them that their worst fear has come true. A species has risen that can not only fight them but defeat them. And tell them this is their only warning. They'll send everything, Thexara said weakly. The entire Imperial fleet, tens of thousands of ships. We're counting on it, Chen replied. In fact, we're ready for it. You see, Marshal, the 13 Blackstars you face today? They're our first generation. We're already building the second generation. And they make these ships look primitive. The communication ended. The surviving Zalathi ships were released from whatever hold the humans had on them. They limped toward the edge of the solar system, carrying news that would shake the Empire to its foundations. On Earth, the celebrations had begun. But in the shipyards of Earth and Luna, work continued. More Blackstars were already under construction. The war for freedom had only just begun. Part 4, the Zalathi Empire had never assembled such a fleet. From every corner of their domain, ships were called back. Mining vessels were converted to troop transports. Pleasure yachts became scout ships. Even the ancient museum pieces were reactivated and armed. 20,000 vessels gathered at the staging point near the Kelos Nebula. Emperor Zintal himself took command. In his million-year history, the Empire had never faced an existential threat. Now, for the first time, they did. Admiral Chen watched the intelligence reports from the bridge of the USS Blackstar. Human spies, members of various species who had secretly allied with Earth, sent constant updates. 20,000 ships, Captain Martinez said quietly. That's more than we calculated. But not more than we can handle, Chen replied. Send the signal. Operation Exodus begins now. Across human space, something remarkable happened. Every human colony, every space station, every mining outpost began to move. Not evacuating, but literally moving. Hidden engines activated. Massive structures that had seemed permanently anchored started to travel through space. The colonies were ships. They had always been ships. For 50 years, humanity had built their colonies with hidden capabilities. What looked like residential blocks were actually modular ship components. What seemed like power plants were disguised engine cores. Every human settlement was a potential warship, waiting for activation. But the real surprise was Earth itself. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in caverns that had been carefully excavated over decades, ancient technology hummed to life. Devices humanity had found and studied and finally understood. Machines that could do the impossible. A shield formed around Earth. Not an energy shield like the Empire used, but something that bent space itself. Earth became untouchable, existing slightly out of phase with normal reality. Any weapon fired at it would simply pass through as if the planet wasn't there. The Zalathi fleet arrived to find not a single planet to conquer, but a distributed network of human forces spread across a dozen systems. And at the center of it all, Earth itself had become invulnerable. Emperor Zintal was furious. Find their weakness. There must be something. His scientists worked frantically. Emperor, the planetary shield is based on ancient technology we don't fully understand. It could take years to find a way through. We don't have years. Attack their colonies. Destroy their mobile stations. The Imperial fleet spread out, trying to engage the distributed human forces. But this was exactly what humanity wanted. The mobile colonies weren't just running. They were leading the Zalathi fleet into carefully prepared trap zones, regions of space where humanity had placed hidden weapons, dormant satellites that looked like debris, asteroid fields that were actually minefields. The first trap was sprung near Jupiter. 1,000 Zalathi ships pursued what they thought was a fleeing colony ship. As they passed through Jupiter's radiation belt, hidden satellites activated. They didn't attack directly. Instead, they amplified Jupiter's natural magnetosphere, turning it into a massive electromagnetic pulse. Every electronic system on the Zalathi ships failed simultaneously. Life support, weapons, engines, everything went dark. The ships drifted helplessly as smaller human vessels moved in to capture them. Near Mars, another trap waited. The red planet had been mined extensively for 50 years, leaving massive underground caverns. When Zalathi forces approached, thinking they were attacking mining stations, the caverns were detonated. The explosions were so large they changed Mars's orbit slightly. The debris formed a deadly cloud that shredded anything trying to pass through. But the biggest surprise came from the black stars themselves. There weren't 13 anymore. There were 50. Humanity had been building them in secret locations throughout the solar system. Shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, construction bays on the dark side of moons, facilities in the outer system where Zalathi sensors never reached. And these weren't the same black stars from before. These were Generation 2. Larger, faster, and equipped with weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. The USS Tokyo fired a weapon that created temporary black holes, not large enough to sustain themselves but existing just long enough to tear apart anything nearby. Entire squadrons of Zalathi ships were pulled into gravitational anomalies that lasted only seconds, but left nothing behind. The USS Berlin demonstrated a terrifying new capability. It could duplicate itself, not building new ships but creating temporary quantum copies that existed for minutes at a time. One ship became 10, all equally real, all equally deadly. The Zalathi couldn't tell which was the original until the copies vanished, only to reappear somewhere else. The USS Cairo used what humanity called a causal weapon. It fired projectiles that arrived at their targets before they were launched. The Zalathi ships were destroyed by weapons that, from their perspective, hadn't been fired yet. Their defense computers couldn't predict attacks that defied the flow of time itself. Emperor Zintal watched his massive fleet being systematically destroyed, not through overwhelming force but through innovation, planning, and technologies that shouldn't exist. How? He demanded of his advisors. How did they develop all this? The answer came from an unexpected source. A transmission from one of the Empire's subject worlds, the Korvax. The underground dwellers had always been considered broken, defeated. But now their leader appeared on screen. Emperor Zintal, the Korvax representative, said, "You want to know how the humans did this? We helped them. We all did. Every species you conquered but didn't destroy. We've been sharing our knowledge with humanity for decades. More transmissions followed. The Marlocks, the Vivendi, the Quetzal, dozens of species the Empire had subjugated. They all had the same message. They had secretly aided humanity, providing technologies, resources, and intelligence. You created the perfect conditions for this rebellion," the Korvax continued. "You oppressed us all equally. You gave us a common enemy, and when humanity showed they could fight back, we all chose to help them." The Emperor's rage was beyond description. He had been betrayed not by one species but by his entire empire. "All ships converge on Earth. If we cannot breach their shield, we will blockade them forever. They will starve." But Admiral Chen had anticipated this too. As the Zalathi fleet tried to regroup around Earth, humanity played its final card. The sun began to dim, not naturally, but artificially. Humanity had built a partial Dyson sphere, millions of collection satellites positioned around the sun, normally invisible against the star's glare. They had been gathering solar energy for years, storing it for this moment. Now they released it all at once, not as a weapon but as propulsion. Earth began to move. The entire planet, protected by its ancient shield, was being pushed by focused solar energy. Earth was leaving its orbit, becoming a rogue planet, free to travel wherever humanity chose. Impossible, Emperor Zintal screamed. You can't move a planet. But humanity could, and they did. Admiral Chen broadcast to the entire Zalathi fleet. Emperor Zintal, your empire is finished. Not because we destroyed it, but because you destroyed yourselves. You grew stagnant, comfortable in your superiority. You never innovated because you never had to. You never united your subjects because you ruled through fear alone. The human colonies were converging now, forming up with Earth as it moved through space. Together they created a mobile civilization, no longer tied to any single star. We're leaving, Chen continued. We're taking Earth and any species that wants to join us, and we're leaving this part of the galaxy. You can have your empire, what's left of it. But know this, we'll be watching. If you try to oppress others again, we'll return, and next time we won't be so merciful. The Emperor wanted to pursue, to continue fighting, but his fleet was down to less than 3,000 functional ships. Many of his subject worlds were already declaring independence, inspired by humanity's example. The empire that had stood for 3 millennia was collapsing in a matter of days. His tactical officer reported more bad news. Emperor, we're detecting similar energy signatures from 12 other subject worlds. They're all starting to move. The humans shared the technology. Chen's final message played across all frequencies. This is the dawn of a new age. The age of freedom. The age of innovation. The age where no single power controls the galaxy. We are humanity, and we have shown the path. Who will follow? The response was immediate. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, billions of beings of different species stood up and said the same word. We will. Part 5. 6 months had passed since Earth left its orbit. The mobile planet now traveled through interstellar space, accompanied by a fleet of colony ships and the growing alliance of freed worlds. In the conference hall of the Uss Blackstar, representatives from 47 species gathered for a historic meeting. Admiral Chen stood at the podium, looking out at beings he would have never imagined working alongside just a year ago. The insectoid vivendi, the crystalline Zalathi defectors, the underground Korvax, and dozens of others, all former subjects of the Empire now free. We stand at a crossroads, Chen began. We've broken the Empire's hold on this region of the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds are free, but freedom without structure leads to chaos. We need to decide what comes next. The Korvax representative, Elder Grix, stood. His pale eyes, evolved for underground living, had adapted to artificial light during the months of freedom. The humans have proven themselves as liberators, but we will not trade one master for another. Nor should you, Chen replied. That's why we're proposing something different. Not a new empire, but a confederation. Every species maintains their independence, their own governments, their own cultures. But we unite for mutual defense and shared advancement. The Marlock's admiral, whose people had once tried to destroy their own sun rather than surrender, raised a mechanical appendage. And who leads this confederation? We all do. A council with rotating leadership, no single species in permanent control. Decisions made by consensus when possible, by vote when necessary. A young Zalathi, one of the few who had defected to the human cause, spoke up. My people ruled for 3,000 years. We know what happens when power concentrates in one place. It corrupts, stagnates, destroys. The human proposal has merit. The discussions continued for hours. Some species wanted stronger unity, almost a federation. Others wanted looser ties, merely a mutual defense pact. But slowly, through negotiation and compromise, an agreement took shape. The Galactic Confederation of Free Worlds. Meanwhile, in what remained of Zalathi space, Emperor Zintal sat in his throne room. His empire had shrunk to less than 100 systems. Most of his fleet was destroyed or had defected. Subject worlds declared independence daily. His advisors brought him report after report of disasters. The Quexel have seized our shipyards in their sector. The Batari have closed all trade routes. 3 more colony worlds have requested to join the Human Confederation. And what of our attempts to recreate their technology? The Emperor asked. We cannot. The humans didn't just use ancient technology. They combined it with innovations from every species we conquered. They created something new, something we don't have the foundation to understand. It would take us centuries to catch up. The Emperor stood and walked to his viewing window. Outside he could see his capital city. Once it had been filled with tribute from 100 worlds. Now many buildings stood empty. Perhaps, he said quietly, we were wrong. His advisors looked at each other in shock. The Emperor had never admitted error before. For 3,000 years we believed in superiority through dominance. We crushed innovation because it threatened order. We separated species because unity threatened control, and in doing so, we created the conditions for our own defeat. Back on Earth, or rather on the mobile Earth as it was now called, humanity was sharing everything. The ancient technologies from Mars were distributed freely. The dimensional phase technology, the gravitational weapons, the quantum computers, all of it was given to any species that wanted it. Some questioned this approach. Why give away advantages that humanity had fought so hard to develop? Admiral Chen explained it to a group of human colonists. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we learned from everyone. Our strength came from diversity, from combining different perspectives and technologies. If we hoard knowledge now, we become just like the Empire. The USS Blackstar had become more than a warship. It was a symbol. Its image appeared on the new Confederation flag, a black star on a field of white, surrounded by circles representing all member species. The ship itself continued to patrol, but its mission had changed. Instead of preparing for war, it searched for species still under oppression. The galaxy was vast, and the Zalathi Empire had been only one of several oppressive powers. Captain Martinez brought Chen a report. Admiral, we've detected signals from beyond the Sagittarius Arm. It appears to be a distress call. A species called the Yoran. They're facing extinction from something called the hegemony. Chen studied the data. Another oppressive force, another group of species in need of liberation. Prepare the fleet, he ordered, and send word to our allies. It seems our work isn't done. Within days, 50 Black Stars and hundreds of support vessels were ready. But this time they weren't alone. Ships from the Korvax, the Marlocks, the Vivendi, and a dozen other species joined them. The Confederation's first joint military operation. Even more surprising, a small fleet of Zalathi ships appeared. Not to fight against them, but with them. They were led by Commander Krikstal, the same ambassador who had discovered humanity's secret months ago. Admiral Chen, Krikstal transmitted, my ships wish to join your mission. We've spent 3,000 years taking from the galaxy. Perhaps it's time we gave something back, Chen smiled. This was what victory really looked like. Not the defeat of an enemy, but their transformation into an ally. As the combined fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Chen reflected on how far humanity had come. 50 years of oppression had not broken them. It had forged them into something stronger. They had taken the worst the universe could offer and transformed it into the foundation for something better. The fleet jumped, leaving behind a galaxy that was fundamentally changed. The Age of Empires was ending. The Age of Confederation had begun. On Earth, in a small apartment in what used to be New York, an old woman watched the news of the fleet's departure. She had been 20 when the Zalathi first arrived. She had lived her entire adult life under occupation. Now at 70, she was seeing a free galaxy. Her granddaughter, born free just 6 months ago, played with a toy spaceship. It was painted black like the ships that had won their freedom. Grandma, the child asked, will there always be bad people in space? The old woman thought about it. Maybe. But now there will always be good people ready to stop them. And more importantly, those good people will work together. In the depths of space, the USS Blackstar and its fleet emerged from hyperspace near the Yoran home world. The planet was under siege by massive geometric ships, the Hegemony's fleet. They were twice the size of anything the Confederation had faced before. Admiral Chen opened a channel to all Confederation ships. This is what we trained for. This is why we unite. Not for conquest, but for liberation. Not for domination, but for freedom. All ships engaged. The battle was fierce. The Hegemony had technologies the Confederation hadn't seen before. Ships that could split into smaller vessels, weapons that attacked the mind as well as the body, shields that adapted to whatever hit them. But the Confederation had something more powerful. They had diversity. Where one species' technology failed, another's succeeded. Where one tactic didn't work, another did. The Korvax's stealth, the Marlocks' energy weapons, the Vivendi's navigation, humanity's innovation, and even the Zelothis disciplined formations. Together they were unstoppable. The Yoran were freed. Another species joined the Confederation. The hegemony retreated, but not before sending a message. You have won this battle, but the galaxy is vast. There are powers you cannot imagine, forces that make us look primitive. Your Confederation will face challenges that will test every bond you've formed. Admiral Chen responded for the entire fleet. Then we'll face them together. That's what makes us strong. Not our weapons or our ships, but our unity. We are the Galactic Confederation of Free Worlds. We are diverse. We are united, and we will not kneel to anyone. The message spread across the galaxy, carried by quantum transmissions and old-fashioned radio waves alike. On 1,000 worlds in 1,000,000 languages, the same idea took hold. Freedom was possible. Unity was stronger than oppression. And at the heart of it all, humanity's example shone like a black star, absorbing the darkness of tyranny and transforming it into the light of hope. The USS Blackstar led the fleet home, but home was no longer a place. It was an idea. A confederation of worlds united not by force but by choice. The Empire's worst fear had indeed come true. Not just that humanity had unveiled a powerful warship, but that they had unveiled something far more dangerous to tyranny. They had unveiled the future.